Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Aurora Smedley podcast, where I speak with you about what the world needs to hear. And today, I'm going to be speaking about a topic that I love, which is about why you should travel now and that you should not wait to travel until another time. So, why am I speaking about this today? Well, I have a friend right now who is considering traveling abroad for the first time, and I also saw this post on Instagram recently where this woman was a very successful young lady was speaking about why she felt that you should hustle in your 20s and that you should not travel in your 20s because you are developing skills rather than just feeding your need for instant gratification and fun and experience. And wow, I was like, I do not agree. And this is why. So I'm going to be explaining why I feel that it is so important to travel when you are younger or to travel sooner rather than later, and the psychological and personal benefits that come from traveling sooner rather than at a different time. About myself, in relation to travel, I grew up in a family that loved traveling, and so I traveled to at least 20 different countries by the time that I was 10. And in my adulthood, I spent about 2 years living and traveling in other countries, and about 6 months traveling solo, hiking and backpacking along the Pacific Crest Trail and in other locations. So for people who do not travel, what they perceive as the benefit of traveling is actually not what the benefit of traveling is. You see, people who do not travel or who have not done extensive travel think that the benefit of traveling is that you get to have fun. Wow, I do not agree with that. So I will start out by saying that the benefit of traveling is not just fun. Yes. Can it be fun? Yes. Can it be shitty? Yes. And can it just completely really challenge you and really suck? Yes. It can be all of these things. So what is the real benefit of traveling then? Okay, so the real benefit of traveling, in my opinion, is understanding that reality is subjective. If you live only in your culture for your entire life, you will feel that the way that you dress, the way that you speak, the language that you speak, the gestures that you have, the way that you have of communicating, the way that you run your life, the way that you organize your values is the right way. That is the correct way that is the objectively correct way for someone to be. But when you spend time traveling in different countries, if you go and live abroad for an extensive period of time, what you begin to see is that your culture, your language, your way of being, your way of eating is not something that is inherent to anything. In fact, the fabric of our culture is something that we have invented, and that what our culture is, our quote unquote reality, is actually a figment of our collective imagination. So when you go and travel for an extensive period of time, it gives you more perspective on what culture you exist in, and it gives you the option to directly choose whether you or not you want to participate in said culture. You see, then your relationship with your own culture becomes a choice rather than a default. Your participation in your own culture, the choices that you make, become a conscious decision rather than an unconscious default. in essence, when you travel, it awakens you to the matrix that you live in and how that affects your day-to-day decisions. And then it can become a choice as to whether you participate or not, rather than an automatic reflex. So when you travel younger, what you are enabling is for you to have that same perspective and carry that perspective through the rest of your life. So in essence, when you travel younger, you are making an investment in your perspective. You are making an investment in your clarity. You are making an investment in who you are and who you will become. Okay. So when you see reality as subjective, the things that other people care about, such as external representations of success or power, become less important to you because you realize that these are in fact not objective traits. So this is the reason that I encourage people to travel outside of your own country. Okay, guys, traveling to Canada does not really count. Okay, if you're in the United States and you travel to Canada, I'm sorry, but that does not really count. Same if you are in Canada and you travel to the United States. I'm sorry, it's just not that different. But if you travel to another place where there is a different culture, a different language, a different cuisine, then this starts to shape what your perspective on reality is. Okay? So the next thing that I want to point to is the benefit of long-term travel. So some people think that if you go out for a vacation that's 2 weeks versus if you go and you immerse yourself in a culture for multiple months, that this is the same. That if you go and the amount of time is the only thing that is different. And if you travel 6 times for 2 weeks to the same country, it's the same as if you stay in that country for 12 weeks. Okay. And I do not agree with this perspective. And the reason why is that if you travel long term in another country, it is long enough to change your neurology. You see, our habit forming, our brain synapses have a certain timeline for how long it takes for them to change. You see, for example, it takes a habit about 30 to 60 days. There's some disagreement, but about 30 to 60 days in order for the habit to become ingrained in your mind. So similarly, if you go and immerse yourself in a different culture, if you stay out there for a long enough amount of time, then it has the time to affect your, It has the time to affect your neural synapses. It has the time to affect the way that you think long term because it has shaped your actual brain development. So this is why if you travel long term, this is going to be very different. You see, I actually had this similar experience when I was on the Pacific Crest Trail versus speaking to section hikers, i.e. people that go out for 1 to 2 weeks. If you are out in the wilderness for 5 months versus if you are in the wilderness for 2 weeks, your brain is shaped by that experience in a way that somebody who is only there for 1 to 2 weeks does not have the same structural impact on your brain. So awesome. So I've talked about why travel changes your perspective. I've talked about why travel indicates to you how reality is subjective. I've also spoken about how travel, short-term versus long-term, can have a different impact on your psychology, right? So if you travel younger, if you travel sooner, this is investment in your perspective perspective. And what does this mean for you long term? Well, I think that a lot of people who travel younger, they have the advantage, they have the opportunity of getting to really, really reflect on their purpose here on Earth. So you see, I think some people who don't travel long term or who wait to travel, they think that traveling is just a nice hit of dopamine that is really fun and that is hitting all of these instant gratification monkeys that we have. And this can be true to some extent, correct? But if you travel longer term, when you're younger, you will find that eventually the novelty wears off. Okay. And eventually the novelty wears off and then it starts to become difficult. You start to realize that you don't have the same connection to a place and therefore to its people and its community and to building and to creating that you would have if you were anchored in a place. You begin to value being anchored in a place. You begin to value long-term friendships because the friendships that you have, the experiences that you have, they're so fleeting. It's more difficult to develop routines. It's more difficult to develop long-term relationships. It's more difficult to build than if you are in a place long term. So this is what I think is very clearly the value of traveling and recognizing that there is actually legitimate challenges, psychological challenges to traveling long term when you're younger, and that it's not all just roses and daisies. This is not to, and I do want to acknowledge as well that not everybody has the opportunity to travel when they're younger. And for me, I was very fortunate to get to travel so young at the age of under 10 and to be able to spend time traveling after I graduated from university. You know, I know that some people are not as fortunate as to be able to do so. But if you do have that opportunity, travel is not a frivolous thing that is simply based in having fun. And I also don't want to disvalue having fun. Having fun is awesome. You should have fun. But I want to point to the larger effects of traveling when you are younger and the benefits of doing so for your long-term perspective. So I also want to point out that I think that for me, when I was able to travel for an extended period of time as a young adult in my early 20s, I will say that it gave me so much more perspective on who I wanted to be. It gave me more perspective on what kind of purpose, what kind of impact that I wanted to have on other people, and who I wanted to be once I returned to society. So I think that if you were to wait for that until you're older, then everything that you do after that point is going to be affected by a different perspective. And so if you travel when you're younger, then you are able to have this sense of perspective and purpose that is going to carry through everything else that you do later. When I was younger and I was insecure about wanting to travel because my friends didn't do that, my friends didn't travel. They went straight to work or they went straight to graduate school. For the most part, my friends did not go and travel extensively in the way that I did. So I felt insecure about it, actually. But I met a older gentleman at the airport who was maybe in his mid-30s, and it seemed like he was a traveler. So I spoke with him and I told him I wanted to hike the PCT. I wanted to go travel. I wanted to do these things. And he said, you know, I know other people that didn't travel, and sometimes I'm jealous of them because career-wise, they're ahead of me, right? But after I went and traveled, I had all my questions answered. All of my questions, all of my existential, everything, all of these questions were answered. And so now I don't have those questions. So now I can progress through my life, and all of this I know. And I think that if you travel younger, then this shapes how you interact with life afterwards because you have that kind of perspective, because you've answered your questions. So I hope that all of this has given you a really interesting and different perspective on why traveling younger is so beneficial. And I look forward to speaking with you in the next podcast.